As we turn to the book of Ruth, we are at the very end of the season when perhaps Ruth is normally read. The harvest season. It's a story that takes place during the harvest, both the barley harvest and the wheat harvest. So hopefully you guys got a chance to read this fun story. And it's interesting because when was this written? How long ago? I mean, it's thousands of years old, and yet it's very well written, isn't it? As you're reading through, it's like, this is a professional storyteller. This is somebody who knows what they're doing. They know how to keep the attention of the audience. The guy or the gal has some skill. So some background information to Ruth. Let's actually look at verse 1. In the days when the judges ruled. So obviously, this is written sometime in the future, meaning it's not written by Ruth, by Boaz, by Naomi. It's sometime in the future. And so it's saying, hey, this takes place back during the time of the judges. And of course, we have a book in our Bible called Judges. And so we know what that time was like. What was that time like? Everyone did what was right in their own eyes. It was a wicked time for Israel. Now, the time of the judges. Let's do it this way. Well, if I ask some I'll say basic questions. Who came first, Abraham or Moses? And so I think generally people have an idea of, we got, let's say it this way, Abraham, and then, we get Moses, and then we get David, and we know generally who comes before the others. But do we know years? And a really general way of remembering years is, thankfully, they're very round numbers. Abraham's around 2000 BC. Moses is around 1500 BC, and David is about 1000 BC. So very, very simple numbers. And the time of the judges is probably around 1400 BC to maybe 1100 BC, just, a ballpark. And Ruth seems to occur, the story of Ruth seems to occur towards the end of the judges period. So let's say the story takes place around 1200, 1100 BC, somewhere in that time, if that is helpful to have a timeline in your head. So in the days when the judges ruled, there was a famine in the land, and a man of Bethlehem in Judah went to sojourn in the country of Moab, he and his wife and his 2 sons. All right, there's a famine in the land, and they're from what town? Have we ever heard of Bethlehem before? What does Bethlehem mean? Anybody know that? Bethlehem. Every month communion, which we're going to do today, I guess it's every other month, we sing the Baruch Atah, right? And we talk about lechem. Lechem is bread. So we got bet, which is house, and lechem, bread. The house of bread is experiencing a famine. And because there's no bread in the house, this man and his wife and his 2 sons go to Moab, which is where? Where's Moab? Where's the city of Moab? Trick question. It's not a city. So Judah, we know, is in southern Israel, and they go to the east. They either go under the Dead Sea and over, or they cross the Jordan River, and they go east into Moab. And who's Moab, by the way? A lot of questions this morning. Who's Moab? Okay, so there's relationship here. There's blood relationship. We have Terah, who had Abraham, Nahor. Oh boy, I'm forgetting the third brother. And then I think Lot was the son of Nahor, if I'm remembering right. And then so Uncle Abraham and Lot's the nephew. Well, Lot had 2 children, 2 sons. One of those offspring was Moab, and then the other one was Ammon. So these are blood relation to Israel. The name of the man was Elimelech, and the name of his wife is Naomi, and the names of his two sons were Machlon and Kilian. A lot of times people like to talk about the meanings of the names. I'm not sure they really have any bearing in the story, but Naomi's going to play on it a little later in the story, so let's talk about it just briefly. Elimelech means, anybody know? Yeah, God is king, or maybe we'll say my God is king. Naomi, as we'll find out a little later, means pleasant, lovely. The two sons, Machlon and Kilian, are a little weird. I don't expect you guys to recognize the Hebrew there, but Machlon means sickness. Well, actually, the meanings of the two names are kind of unknown, but they might be related to sickness, and then Kilian be related to destruction. So not very positive names, if that is the meaning of those two sons. Now, obviously, Elimelech we know that meaning. Naomi, we know that meaning. So they were Ephrathites from Bethlehem in Judah. So Ephrath would be their clan. So they're from the tribe of Judah, and they're from the clan of Ephrath. And then Elimelech is of the family. They went into the country of Moab and remained there. But Elimelech, the husband of Naomi, died, and she was left with her two sons. These took Moabite wives. The name of the one was Orpah, and the name of the other was, or is, Ruth. And they lived there about 10 years. And both Machlon and Kilian died, so that the woman was left without her two sons or her husband. Sad story. Naomi has another name, and it's Job. Just kidding. We have the story of Job essentially in Naomi. This is a rough life for her. We get a very condensed. Job is very drawn out. We don't really have any emotion invested with Naomi yet, but this is very sad. Now, how long are they in Moab? What did it say there in verse 4? Okay, so for 10 years, that's a long time. Some themes that we're going to come across is this idea of emptiness and fullness. And they leave Israel because they're empty when it comes to seed, as in bread. But in Moab, they have bread, but they are empty as it ends up with seed, as in children. Everyone dies. But the number 10 years. Now, I suspect, now remember, at this point, we have the 5 books of the Torah, we have Joshua, and we have Judges. And that's the amount of scripture at the time of Ruth. And possibly Job. You're right, Job was early. The number 10, when we're talking about descendants or scions or progeny or whatever your favorite word is there, I think the readers, I think the audience, I think maybe Ruth, Naomi are thinking something, although Ruth may not know the story since she's a Moabite. How long was Sarah barren? Trick question, obvious answer, 10. What happened after 10 years in chapter 16 of Genesis? Hagar. And so this idea of at 10 years, there's barrenness and perhaps plan B we need to figure out. Now, why did Elimelech die? Why did Machlon die? Why did Kilian die? All I got to say is be careful. We have no answer. We kind of want to say, well, I'm sure it's like the rest of the Bible where they died young and early because they were wicked, they were evil. Well, it doesn't say that. It doesn't say that. And there's no clues whatsoever in the rest of the story about them being evil. But maybe we could say the boys sinned and Naomi sinned by marrying Moabite women. In other words, Naomi said, okay, boys, let's get some wives for you. Dad's dead. And Orpah and Ruth are now introduced to the family. In Deuteronomy chapter 23, verse 3, it says, no Ammonite or Moabite may enter the assembly of the Lord, even to the 10th generation. none of them may enter the assembly of the Lord forever, because they did not meet you with bread and with water on the way when you came out of Egypt, and because they hired against you Balaam the son of Beor from Pethor of Mesopotamia to curse you. Remember that story earlier this year? The talking donkey? All right, so here we have instructions where they are not allowed to ever supposedly marry a Moabite or an Ammonite. Now, there's two. I'm not going to get into the full discussion on this. We're actually doing Deuteronomy here in a couple of weeks, so this will come up again. But essentially, the two sides of the argument are this. No Ammonite or Moabite may enter the assembly of the Lord. What is the word for assembly? Well, in Hebrew, it is kahal. In Greek, we would say ekklesia. Maybe that sounds familiar to some of you guys, because from ekklesia, we get the word church. And so we can translate it in the New Testament. You look at the context of what's being said and either translate ekklesia as church or assembly, or maybe congregation. Well, it's the same thing here in the Old Testament or in Hebrew. Kahal is either going to be assembly, and so the argument would be, let's say this, no Ammonite or Moabite may ever be married into Israel. Now, the other side of the argument would say, well, no, you got to look at the context, and maybe sometimes the word kahal or assembly is actually talking about leadership. And in that case, I suppose it would be fine to marry a Moabite wife who will not be in the leadership of Israel. So it's a discussion. You can read the scholars taking both sides on it. What the answer is, I'm sure the Lord will reveal when he returns. But we got the story of Ruth. And as you guys read it this past week, was God involved? He was involved. What is the purpose of the story of the Book of Ruth? Why was it written? So let's ask the question before that. When was it written? So when we get to the very end, we see that it has a son was born to Naomi. And they named him Obed. He was the father of Jesse, and who was the father of King David. All right, so we know it was after King David. So there's two main thoughts on this. One, Ruth was written sometime probably around King Solomon. Two, it was written after the exile and they returned to the land. Now that's about a 450-year spread. So which is the right answer? I don't know. I probably lean towards the earlier date. I think it's an exciting thing that was being recorded to show King David and his heritage, to show his pious origin, maybe to explain his non-Israelite blood. The other possibility, as I said, is it was written really late, after Babylon, after Persia, and they returned. We have Ezra and Nehemiah. What did Ezra and Nehemiah do that was so controversial and well known? Anybody remember? Hey, Israelites, what have you done marrying all these non-Israelite women? You must divorce them now. And so the argument would be the story of Ruth was written contra against Ezra and Nehemiah, what they were doing, saying, hey, you guys got to divorce your wives. And so the story was written to show, no, they can be righteous women, and we're going to keep our wives. As I said, I suspect it's the earlier writing. So Elimelech is dead, Machlon is dead, Kilian is dead. Read this from an Israelite, a Middle Eastern understanding. This is a tragedy. This is more just a tragedy of people dying. The tragedy is there's no more descendants. The line is essentially, it's gone. There's no chance of it continuing. And I'm speaking from human perspective. Obviously, we got the story we're going to read. It's over. It's finished. There's complete and utter despair in Naomi. Well, I'll leave it at that. Let's keep going. Verse 6. Then she arose with her daughters-in-law to return from the country of Moab, for she had heard in the fields of Moab that the Lord had visited his people and given them food. All right, it's been 10 years. Now what we're supposed to see is there's a change in tone. There's hope. We've gone from famine to food. This is exciting. This is great. And we had the first mention of Yahweh. He has, well, I won't say he's returned, but he is now in the story. So she set out from the place where she was with her 2 daughters-in-law, and they went on the way to return to the land of Judah. But Naomi said to her 2 daughters-in-law, "Go, return each of you to her mother's house. May the Lord deal kindly with you, as you have dealt with the dead and with me." Now, it might seem a little weird. She's talking about the dead. This isn't anything pagan. She's just saying, hey, you are good wives to my sons, and they are deceased. You're great, but now it's time for you to return. Go back to your families. The Lord grant that you may find rest, each of you in the house of her husband. Go get remarried. I'm old. You're young. Go get some more husbands. Then she kissed them, and they lifted up their voices, and they wept. And they said to her, No, we will return with you to your people. But Naomi said, Turn back, my daughters. Why will you go with me? Have I yet sons in my womb, that they may become your husbands? Turn back, my daughters. Go your way, for I am too old to have a husband. If I should say I have hope, even if I should have a husband this night and should bear sons, would you therefore wait till they have grown? Would you therefore refrain from marrying? No, my daughters, for it is exceedingly bitter to me for your sake that the hand of Yahweh has gone out against me. Then they lifted up their voices and wept again. And Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clung to her. Naomi is speaking from absolute heartbreak, her pain. And yet her love for these 2 girls is, it's better for you to stay here. You guys have a future. I have nothing. Yahweh is not blessing me. She says, the hand of the Lord is against me. This is essentially the final reason she's giving to the 2 girls to say, leave, depart from me. Imagine if the hand of the Lord was actually against you. What would that look like? Everything you try to do in your life to attain success would meet with failure. In Judges chapter 2, verse 15, God's a little upset with Israel, and he says regarding Israel, whenever they marched out, the hand of the Lord was against them for harm, as the Lord had warned them, and as the Lord had sworn to them, and they were in terrible distress. So, perhaps it's overly obvious, when the hand of the Lord is against you, you have success in absolutely nothing. So, I got a question for you. Did Orpah choose incorrectly here in verse 14? Orpah kissed her mother-in-law and said goodbye. Was that a wrong decision? And I'm going to say no. We can all understand this conversation that they're having. It's understandable. It's relatable. And yet, Ruth chose something different. And at the end of the day, we need to all be like Ruth in choosing something that is against common sense, but for righteousness. Let's see what she says. Verse 15. And she said, See, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and to her gods. Return after your sister-in-law. But Ruth said, Do not urge me to leave you or to return from following you. For wherever you go, I will go, and where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there will I be buried. May Yahweh do so to me, and more also, if anything but death parts me from you. Is that a strong oath or kind of a weak one? And when Naomi saw that she was determined to go, she said no more. So in verse 15, she tries one more time to use peer pressure. Hey, look, there goes Orpah. Go with her. And Ruth lets loose. This is virtually an unparalleled statement in the Bible as far as a conversion statement. Rahab, let's look at Rahab. She comes kind of close. In Joshua chapter 2, let's see. She says, she's talking to the two spies, and she says, as soon as we heard about what your God has done, our hearts melted, and there was no spirit left in any man because of you. For the Lord your God, he is God in the heavens above and on the earth beneath. Now, then, please swear by the Lord to deal kindly with me. And yeah, that's a great statement. That's a conversion statement, I suppose, and she's blessed later on for that. But I don't think it holds a candle what Ruth just said. Or how about Naaman in 2 Kings chapter 5, starting in verse 15. So you guys remember who Naaman is? He's the guy who had leprosy. He's not an Israelite. He came to have the Hebrew God heal him. Then he returned to the man of God, he and all his company. He came and stood before him, and he said, behold, I know that there is no God in all the earth but in Israel. So accept now a present from your servant. He said, as the Lord lives, before whom I stand, I will receive no gift. And then he urged him to take it, but he refused. So then Naaman said, if not, please let there be given to me 2 mule loads of earth. For from now on your servant will not offer burnt offerings or sacrifices to any god but the Lord. In this matter may the Lord pardon your servant. When my master goes into the house of Rimmon to worship there, leaning on my arm, and I bow myself in the house of Rimmon, when I bow myself in the house of Rimmon, the Lord pardon your servant in this matter. So those are 2 other non-Israelites in the Old Testament who convert to worshiping Yahweh. But Ruth essentially swears her life to Yahweh and to Naomi. And I think this is the strongest conversion we get. Like Abraham, Ruth has left her people and is known for her kindness. However, and arguably, her conversion is even stronger than Abraham's because Ruth was not given a promise. Right? God says to Abraham, hey, go over here. I'm going to give you some land. And so Abraham goes. Abraham also heard a voice from God. What did Ruth have? Nothing. Do not urge me to leave you or to return from following you. For where you go, I will go. Where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people. Your God will be my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May Yahweh do so to me and more also, if anything but death parts me from you. Has she ever seen God? Has she ever seen Yahweh? She was raised in Moab. Her family's in Moab. Her friends are in Moab. The culture she knew is in Moab. But she commits and says, you know what? All that's in my past, and now I'm looking this direction, and I am laying it all out. I commit my life, right or wrong, I commit my life to your people, your God, and you, Naomi. In Matthew chapter 19, verse 29, Yeshua says, everyone who has left houses or brothers or sisters or father or mother or children or lands for my name's sake will receive 100-fold and will inherit eternal life. Do you think Yeshua's audience was thinking of Ruth? Do you think Yeshua might have been thinking of Ruth? I'm speculating, I don't know. But she did what he said everyone ought to do. How committed are you to the God of the Bible? How committed are you to Yeshua? Like Ruth, have many of you seen him? How many times have you heard his voice speak to you? Ruth never did. And yet she says, you know what? I'm all in. I am fully in. My life is his. I am now an Israelite. Whether or not they've accepted her or not yet. Of course, the answer is no, not yet. All right, I'm going to finish the chapter and I'll open up for some comments and questions. So the two of them went on until they came to Bethlehem. And when they came to Bethlehem, the whole town was stirred because of them. And the women said, "Is this Naomi?" She said to them, "Do not call me Naomi. Do not call me lovely. Call me bitter. Call me Mara. For the Almighty has dealt very bitterly with me. I went away full, and the Lord has brought me back empty. Why call me Naomi when the Lord has testified against me, and the Almighty has brought calamity upon me?" So Naomi returned, and Ruth the Moabite, her daughter-in-law, with her, who returned from the country of Moab. And they came to Bethlehem at the beginning of the barley harvest. So they came to the beginning of the barley harvest. It's about Passover. We're in April, maybe late March, but probably in April. "Do not call me lovely, call me bitter, for Shaddai has dealt very bitterly with me. I went away full, but Yahweh has brought me back empty. Why call me Naomi when Yahweh has testified against me, and Shaddai has brought calamity upon me?" She hurts. She's hurting really bad, and she's speaking out. Who did this to her? Okay. Are any of you ever, I'll say the word tempted, maybe that's a bad choice of words, to say, "God, this is your fault. Why are you treating me this way? Why are you allowing this to happen?" That's what Naomi's saying. She recognizes nothing can happen apart from the will of God. And she says, "I am empty now. I went full," and the theme of emptiness and fullness continues. All right, I'll pause. I realize I've been talking for a while. Questions, comments, chapter 1 of Ruth.
So, do you know anything about Boaz if he was a widower? Because he was older than Ruth.
Well, you're jumping to chapter 2, are you?
Because I need to go.
So all we have about that is the story of Ruth.
Okay.
So to go beyond is just a guesswork.
Okay, there's no
We have no
historic-
firm truth on that.
Okay, that was my question.
So we don't
Yeah.
know if he's a widower. We don't know if he's married. We
Okay.
don't know if he never was married.
Yeah, because I was trying to understand, like he took her and she's not an Israelite, but she converted. I was just trying to understand if he had wives before, because it seems
Doesn't
like
say.
he was older than her, but there's no historical.
Definitely older than her. I agree.
Yeah, that it says that, but I was just trying to find out, because he took her as a wife, and if it was the first wife, because that's the
don't
line
know.
of Yeshua, right?
It is the line of Yeshua.
Yeah, but no historical.
No.
Okay,
Nope, we don't.
all right.
Thank you. All right. Any comments, questions about chapter 1? Caden?
Cheryl has a question. Why does Naomi use both Yahweh and Shaddai?
Yes, I think there's some poeticness going in because both of them are named twice. We got Shaddai twice, we got Yahweh twice, and it's not El Shaddai, but I'm not sure if that really matters. When we go through Genesis, which will be in 2 years, no, it'll be a year from now. We're going to do Deuteronomy. Yeah, so next year we'll do Genesis. We're going to look at this. There is the idea in Genesis that when we see the name El Shaddai, that we are looking at the God who works in the natural realm. So we see El Shaddai when Sarah gets pregnant, when Rachel gets pregnant. Yes, it's miraculous, but to somebody on the outside, it's like, okay, she finally got pregnant. When we look at Yahweh in the story, that's when we see the promises regarding the land. Miraculous stories of this is the covenant name who is going to give the land to the Israelites. And then more powerfully, when we get to Exodus, Yahweh is the one who is pulling them out of Egypt. Let's save that for Genesis. But the long answer is I think she's just saying whether it's El Shaddai or whether it's Yahweh, whether it's through nature or whether it's through the supernatural, the miraculous, I have no blessing. We'll look more at that next year, though.
I think also when they saw how Ruth was, Naomi, it drew them to God. her example,
Who are we
the
talking about?
daughter-in-laws, the
Okay, so when they saw what kind of person Naomi
Yeah.
was,
because
that drew Ruth. Got it.
because your personality draws people.
Your
Like, oh, is
character.
that what God looks like? I want more.
Yeah.
Or if you have, the wrong attitude, people are like, oh, I don't want your God, right? So I just
Question is, and it's a good question. Is I'm not sure Naomi. So her character to how she treated her daughters-in-law, I imagine was great, but she's a very sad, sour person right now towards her God. But that didn't push Ruth away, did it? Good. Let's do chapter 2. Now, Naomi had a relative of her husband's, a worthy man of the clan of Elimelech, whose name was Boaz. All right, so we've already got information about Boaz. What kind of person is he? He's worthy. He's got good character. But Ruth doesn't know that. And Ruth the Moabite said to Naomi, all right, we already know Ruth is a Moabite. And throughout the rest of the story, quite frequently, it's going to say Ruth the Moabite. And I think it's going to be saying that to remind us she's an outsider. She's a foreigner. You thought things would be hard for an Israelite in this circumstances. Imagine it being how it's going to be for a Moabite. So Ruth the Moabite said to Naomi, let me go to the field and glean among the ears of grain after him in whose sight I shall find favor. All right, so what do we know about Ruth? Chapter 1, she's committed and loyal to Naomi, and therefore Naomi's God. But now we see something else. We see that she has what in her character? What is she doing here in verse 2? Is she lazy? She's a self-starter. She doesn't say, hey, Naomi, let us go glean and get food. She says, I'm going to go do it. She's a hard worker. I shall go find favor. And she said to her, go, my daughter. So she set out and went and gleaned in the field after the reapers, and she happened to come to the part of the field belonging to Boaz, who was of the clan of Elimelech. All right. We have lots of words we like in English. Chance, luck, fate. Am I forgetting anything else we want to use? What's that? Happenstance. That was a little safer. We can use happenstance, and it says happen here, right? But the point is that we already know the Lord is at work. But it's just by chance. So typically you have a city, and the fields are around the city. So which direction is she going to go? I mean, she just flipped a coin and said, oh, I'm going to go this way. She just happened to go to a field that is Boaz. And behold, Boaz came from Bethlehem, and he said to the reapers, the Lord be with you. And they answered, the Lord bless you. Then Boaz said to his young man who was in charge of the reapers, whose young woman is this? And the servant who was in charge of the reapers answered, she is the young Moabite woman who came back with Naomi from the country of Moab. She said, please let me glean and gather among the sheaves after the reapers. So she came, and she has continued from early morning until now, except for a short rest. All right, so once again, a statement of she's a hard worker. Now, I said in chapter 1, verse 1, that we are in the days of the judges. What was going on in Israel during the time of the judges? Everyone did what was. And yet here we have Boaz, who is easily and quickly invoking the name of Yahweh. May Yahweh bless you. Hey, boss, may Yahweh bless you. He's a different type. He is a worthy man. Then Boaz said to Ruth, now listen, my daughter, do not go to glean in another field or leave this one, but keep close to my young women. All right, Boaz calls her what? Now the other option would be to call her my sister. So why does he choose my daughter? Well, I think it's as Carolina said, it's Boaz is a lot older. I'm going to hazard a guess that he's at least 20 years older. That he's of an age maybe with Naomi, Elimelech. It's a guess. He could be 30 years older. He says, let your eyes be on the field that they are reaping and go after them. Have I not charged the young men not to touch you? And when you are thirsty, go to the vessels and drink what the young men have drawn. Then she fell on her face, bowing to the ground, and said to him, why have I found favor in your eyes that you should take notice of me, since I am a foreigner? But Boaz answered her, all that you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband has been fully told to me, and how you left your father and mother and your native land and came to a people that you did not know before. May Yahweh repay you for what you have done, and a full reward be given you by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge. Then she said, I have found favor in your eyes, my Lord, for you have comforted me and spoken kindly to your servant, though I am not one of your servants. All right, so who is this young lady? Well, let's state the obvious. They notice that she is young. They notice that she is a hard worker. Good wife qualities so far. And then the servant says to Boaz, and she's been taking care of Naomi, so she is also loyal. Do I want to ask this question? I'll ask it. Why is Boaz so kind to her? Why is he so generous? Now, there's the answer that he gives, which is what? You're taking care of Naomi. You're taking care of my family. So I'm going to be generous to you. I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to tell my young men, don't touch her and be nice to her. And or this could just mean they were just harassed, meaning, hey, you're getting too close, back off. We're still working here. I don't know, but obviously the women were not treated too kindly as they were gleaning. So why was he generous? Well, it could be just, hey, you treat Naomi well. It could also be that he's got the character of Abraham, that he treats strangers kindly. And it could be, now notice, in Genesis, Sarah says she's beautiful. Pharaoh takes her. King Elimelech takes her. Rachel is said to be beautiful, but we are never told that Ruth is actually an attractive young woman. But here maybe is a statement that Boaz says, ooh, la. Yeah, stay in my field. He's taking care of her. And she is humbled and blessed. And then he blesses her. He says, may Yahweh repay you for what you have done for Naomi, and a full reward be given to you by Yahweh, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have taken refuge. That's the song we sang this morning. Everyone's got the tune in their heads now, right? What Boaz doesn't realize, as this prayer, this blessing, is now being fulfilled. And God is doing it through him. And let's keep going. Verse 14. And at mealtime, Boaz said to her, come here and eat some bread and dip your morsel in the wine. Look, the poor people are allowed to glean in the fields of Israel, right? It's written in the Torah. You can't stop them. But here he's inviting her to have lunch with them. This is very, very generous. So she sat beside the reapers, and he passed to her some roasted grain, and she ate until she was satisfied, and she had some left over. When she rose to glean, Boaz instructed his young men, let her glean even among the sheaves, and don't reproach her. And also pull out some from the bundles for her, and leave it for her to glean, and do not rebuke her. Okay, so the workers they got their size, they're cutting, then they wrap it and they bundle it and they're gathering it together. The gleaners have to stay back. Once they clear out a field, and then the gleaners can follow and pick up the leftovers. He's saying, what you guys gather together, kind of drop a bundle here and there and let her gather it. This is over the top generosity. She's not having to pick up a grain here and a grain there. She's getting bundles. Boss, are you sure? It's like dropping, a $100 bill here and there to let the homeless pick it up. Verse 17. So she gleaned in the field until evening. Then she beat out what she had gleaned, and it was about an ephah of barley. All right, what's an ephah? An ephah is actually an Egyptian word that came with Israel when they left Egypt. And it means basket. But how much is it? There's some disagreement, but it's large. And I'm using Dr. Hubbard with this, his commentary, and he says it probably ended up being about 29 pounds of barley, of grain. Now, in the Babylonian records, it says that a male worker would reap about 2 pounds a day. So one worker, a young man, could gather about 2 pounds of barley, and she took home about 29 pounds. Do you understand the over-the-top generosity? And she took it up and went into the city. Her mother-in-law saw what she had gleaned. She also brought out and gave her what food she had left over from lunch. And her mother-in-law said to her, "Where did you glean today? And where have you worked? Blessed be the man who took notice of you." So she told her mother-in-law with whom she had worked and said, "This man's name with whom I work today is Boaz." And Naomi said to her daughter-in-law, "May he be blessed by the Lord, whose kindness has not forsaken the living or the dead." Naomi also said to her, "The man is a close relative of ours, one of our redeemers." And Ruth the Moabite said, "Besides, he said to me, 'You shall keep close to my young men until they have finished all my harvest.'" And Naomi said to Ruth, her daughter-in-law, "It is good, my daughter, that you go out with his young women, lest in another field you be assaulted." So she kept close to the young women of Boaz, gleaning until the end of the barley and the wheat harvest, and she lived with her mother-in-law. All right. When we read this story in, say, like a little kid's book, or we watch an animated narration of it, it tends to be a quick story, meaning, hey, they got back to Israel, she went out to Boaz's field, and they got married. Or maybe it was a 1 week long story. But here at the end of chapter 2, it tells us this is lasting the whole barley harvest as well as the wheat harvest. So it's going for April and May, and it's probably, right around now is the end of the story. And it says during this time that she is living in town with Naomi. Let me just pause there and see what comments and questions we have now for the first 2 chapters. Anything you guys want to say? Russ.
Yeah, I just love this story. I think it's also important to realize that Boaz, I think it's his mother or grandmother, is Rahab, the harlot. So understanding that, my implication is when he's seeing Ruth, it's kind of like seeing, his mom, or like.
Okay.
Great
grandmother.
And,
yeah.
And so maybe as a child he was treated as an outcast as well, being a daughter of a harlot and not being the DNA. And so I think it's very inspired by Yahweh to have Judaism, and even Messianic Judaism, on Shavuot, they read the whole book of Ruth orally. And on Yom Kippur, they read the book of Jonah orally. And both those stories are against their theology. When you look at, they say that the Torah is for the Jews, and and there's not this grafting in of Gentiles to become Israel. And so I think that this story is such a beautiful story of God's mercy. And when leaders make bad decisions, as the men did in this family, he has so much more grace and mercy towards the women who are righteous. I've heard people downplay Naomi as part of the curse, but they're more of the victims of the men making the bad decisions and stepping up to the plate of righteousness and faith, and whether you have Jewish DNA or not. It's just a beautiful story of that.
Good. All right. Herb?
Just something I noticed, it was quite interesting, is you see kind of a turning of the heart of Naomi. Because where she was saying, "I am bitter, I have lost everything," but then as she's seeing as God is beginning to work, it says, "May he be blessed by the Lord, whose kindness has not forsaken the living or the dead."
Yes.
Very parallel to what she was referring to in a negative sense before, but now we see her eyes are open how good God is.
Yeah, you almost see the transformation. If you're in the room with her, her face would just light up like, what just happened? 10 years of horrible stuff, and now I got good news. Something wonderful is about to happen. Go ahead, Jennifer.
I'm just curious, like it refers to them as his young women. So how are they his young women?
So I suspect it's talking about female servants. Okay. I don't think it has anything to do with daughters or wives. Okay, what's your hand up?
With what you were talking about, the themes of emptiness and fullness, and you were emphasizing like how much was being left for Ruth, like the 20-something pounds of wheat and all that stuff, and it seems than you would expect for like what poor people to glean. And so if like this was the cap you would expect for fullness, it seems like it's going even beyond that now with our theme, which that stood out to me.
Good. He's a very generous man. All right, anyone else? Okay, well, Caden was right. We are not going to finish Ruth. We're going to stop there. So go ahead and read Ruth again next week. Just so you guys know the plan, after we finish Ruth, we're going to do the book, our one Torah book a year. So we're going to do Deuteronomy. And then after Deuteronomy, we're going to do Joshua. And after that, I don't know. So, Caden, if you could, yes. And Salvador, if you and your wife, and I am, so we're going to do communion now. And while it is being handed out, I'm going to read 1 Corinthians chapter 11 to hear what Paul says about taking the Lord's Supper. And Paul says this. He says this to the Corinthians. In the following instructions, I do not commend you because when you come together, it is not for the better, but for the worse. For in the first place, when you come together as a church, by the way, ecclesia, kahal, right? I hear that there are divisions among you, and I believe it in part. For there must be factions among you in order that those who are genuine among you may be recognized. When you come together, it is not the Lord's Supper that you eat. For in eating, each one goes ahead with his own meal, not small. One goes hungry and another person gets drunk. What in the world? Do you not have houses to eat and drink in? Or do you despise the church of God and humiliate those who have nothing? What shall I say to you? Shall I commend you in this? No, I shall not. For I received from the Lord what I also delivered to you, that the Lord Jesus, on the night when he was betrayed, took bread. And when he had given thanks, do this in remembrance of me. In the same way also he took the cup after supper, saying, this cup is the new covenant in my blood. Do this as often as you drink it in remembrance of me. For as often as you eat this bread and drink the cup, you proclaim the Lord's death until he comes. Whoever, therefore, eats the bread or drinks the cup in an unworthy manner will be guilty concerning the body and blood of the Lord. Let a person examine himself then, and so eat of the bread and drink of the cup. For anyone who eats and drinks without discerning the body eats and drinks judgment on himself. That is why many of you are weak and ill, and some have died. But if we judged ourselves truly, we would not be judged. But when we are judged by the Lord, we are disciplined so that we may not be condemned along with the world. So then, my brothers, when you come together to eat, wait for one another. If somebody's hungry, eat at home, so that when you come together, it will not be for judgment. So this morning, as we eat this symbolic piece of bread and sip of juice, we remember the death of our Lord and anticipate his return. In the context here, the idea of remembering his death and that we are one body, his body, the question becomes, do we focus on each other? Do we think about each other? Do we care about each other? Are we Boaz when Ruth comes in? And if we don't care about each other, well, at this point, God was killing some of the Corinthians, some of the people in the church, because they were so selfish and they did not care about their brothers and sisters. And as I have said before, this is merely symbolic, and this is not what was communion in the Corinthian church. Rather, it's what we do in the other room, the whole meal. And so those of you who get in line first, the application from 1 Corinthians 11 would be make sure you don't take so much food that there isn't enough left for those at the end of the line. Care for each other. provide for each other, love each other. Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who brings forth bread from the earth. Go ahead and eat.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei pri hagafen. Amen.
Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who creates the fruit of the vine. Go ahead and drink. From Numbers chapter 6, verse 24, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. And may the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. May he give you shalom.